We're live.
All right, great. Chair Purnell, take us away.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting of the October 7th meeting of the Mendocino County Planning Commission to order at 9:01 a.m. The Mendocino County Planning Commission meetings will be conducted virtually and not available for in-person public participation. Meetings are live streamed and available for viewing on the Mendocino County YouTube page at www.youtube.com/Mendocino County Video. In order to minimize the risk of exposure during this time of emergency, the public may participate digitally in meetings by sending comments to pbscommissions@mendocinocounty.org in lieu of personal attendance. All public comment will be made immediately available to the commissioner, staff, and the general public as they are received and processed by staff and can be viewed as attachments to this meeting agenda at the Planning Commission agenda page. Requests for telecomment are required to be submitted prior to 7 a.m. the morning of the meeting. If you requested to speak under public expression, please call in. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Wiedemann?
Here.
Commissioner Pollan?
Here.
Commissioner Jones?
Oops. Here.
Commissioner Morris?
Here. Good morning, everyone.
Chair Purnell?
Here.
Thank you.
Great, and I noticed that we are joined by an additional attendee today as well.
Hi, I'm Linda Roofing. I'm the consultant who will be presenting the local coastal program amendment item on your agenda this morning.
Wonderful, welcome, Linda.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have a determination of legal notice?
Yeah, the matter on the agenda has been properly noticed.
Fantastic, and I'd like to turn it over to the director for the director's report.
Good morning, Chair Purnell, members of the Planning Commission, Nash Gonzalez, Director of the Department. I just wanted to go ahead and give the Commission an update on a few matters. First of all, I'd like to let the Planning Commission know that we have somewhat completed our recruitment for planners. We have hired 5 new planners. 2 have already started in the department, with the remaining 3 beginning their tour of duty with the county in November. So we'll have 5 new additional planners. We are currently recruiting for chief planner for the Fort Bragg office, and we've also begun recruitment for another building inspector. As far as code enforcement we have had 3 new code enforcement officers start at the end of September. This is part of our code enforcement reorganization process, with additional code enforcement officers to be hired later in the year. And let's see, as far as staffing, that's what we've got to report so far. One of the planners that we've hired will eventually move to the Fort Bragg office, so we'll have 1 additional planner in Fort Bragg, but that's going to be several months away. We have a training process that occurs here in Ukiah, and then that individual will go to the Fort Bragg office. So more to come. And so the other item I wanted to bring to the Commission's attention, and this is just an information item only, is there is a new 4290 process that will be implemented at the beginning of the new year. And this new process really involves starting the application process with planning and building as opposed to CAL FIRE. Our building official, Mike Oliphant, is here who's been working with CAL FIRE on this new process and can give you a brief overview.
Thank you, Nash. Good morning to everybody in attendance. CAL FIRE has notified us that they have a change in procedure for the 4290 process. For those of you may not know, 4290 is a CAL FIRE form that requires a pre-approval and a final approval for all new projects, basically detached projects, residential and commercial in nature. This new procedure will take effect January 1st. And it's in working order right now. CAL FIRE and Planning and Building are communicating, and it appears that the process will not add any additional time to applicants through the plan review process. The basic change is this, and I'll be brief. Prior to January 1st and years past, an applicant would always go to CAL FIRE first and get the 4290 form approved by CAL FIRE for pre-approval. That will no longer take place. The applicant will come to planning and building with their plans, application, and site plan and submit the whole package to us. We will make a copy of the site plan and the application, give them a permit application number. They will then send it to CAL FIRE, email it, or drop it off in person to CAL FIRE unit. And CAL FIRE will do a 2-week plan review on it, and then it will be submitted back to planning and building and will be required prior to issuance of the permit. And that's basically the gist of the change. And we're going to keep it general right now, and the final drafts of the CAL FIRE documents are being drafted right now, and we will keep you posted. Thank you.
And again, this is an information item. Basically, we'll have more to report on later in the year, but this is still in the works. So I just wanted to bring this to the Commission's attention. And with that, that concludes the Director's report, and I'm open for any questions.
Great. And so since that was an informational item, are we able to entertain questions on that this morning?
I'm going to defer to County Council.
So Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I think if there's questions that the commissioners would like to pose to staff, that'd be fine. I'm not sure we can do much back and forth. We mean, like the director said, we'll be coming back with any kind of final update, and final documents from CAL FIRE can be presented back to the commission at a later date and then agendized for review.
Okay, Commissioner Wiedemann.
Yes, I have, to Mike Oliphant, on the new CAL FIRE 4290. So in other words, my question is, it's a time thing because things are taking a lot longer to get permits across the board in the county. So my thing is, an applicant sends this package in, their building permit package in, and then the planning department /building department to get a building permit sends it over the hill to Willits, more or less, and then they have to send it back. Before we used to do it all ahead of time, so we had their approval with our building permit package, which saved time. So can you clarify that, Mike?
Yes, certainly. So we've explored this time question, and there will be no additional time. But like I said before, the applicant will come into planning and building, submit the whole submittal. We will, right at that time when they submit, give them a site plan and a copy of their application back. And at that time, they will submit that to CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE has stated they will definitely have their review time completed within 2 weeks on every project. So there will, as you can see, there will be no additional time period involved in the plan review process. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Wiedemann?
It does. The only thing is yes, it does. It answers my question, but usually some of the applicants have that process already done by the time they submit a building permit application. It's part of the submission.
If I may, through the chair, what we're looking at is to start doing some public outreach early on, at least in November, December, is posting notifications on the department's website. CAL FIRE is going to do the same thing. And so we will begin to educate the public that the process at the first of the year will begin with planning and building.
And just to be clear, this is a requirement from CAL FIRE, not planning and building. This is born through the state of California, CAL FIRE department. But I do believe the process will develop into a fluid process.
And again,
Right.
I'll basically note that this is preliminary. We're still working things with CAL FIRE. Things could change, but at a later date, we'll bring back more information after everything is finalized.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had just a comment, and that is maybe that they should put like a little flyer about this change at the building department stand, because not all your contractors are going to be looking at your website. It's just not the most effective way to communicate with your contractors. And then I had a bigger issue question. That is CAL FIRE rolling this change out statewide, or is this just a Mendocino change? Is there a change in their policies about how they're regulating like the woody area around a house and or access roads?
So if I may, through the chair, to answer Commissioner Jones' question is, as I mentioned before, flyers are going to be posted at both the Fort Bragg office and the Ukiah office, as well as CAL FIRE. So that's going to be posted at the counters. And as far as the process, this is statewide. Obviously, they're implementing county by county.
Any additional questions from the commission? Okay. Great. Well, I want to turn it back over to the director in case there's any concluding comments.
If I may, through the chair, there's no additional comments. Again, I just wanted to go ahead and debut this information to the Planning Commission. Again, let you know what our staffing levels are, as well as this new item from CAL FIRE. So that concludes the director's report.
Thank you for that report, Director Gonzalez. And we'll be moving on to agenda item 4, matters from the public expression. The Planning Commission welcomes participation in commission meetings. This item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the commission that are not on the posted agenda and items which have not already been considered by the commission. No action will be taken. Individuals wishing to address the commission under public expression are welcome to do so via telecomment or email in lieu of personal attendance. Emails shall be sent to pbscommissions@mendocinocounty.org. All correspondence received will be made available on the Planning Commission agenda page. To submit public comments via telecomment, a request form must have been received by 7 a.m. the morning of the meeting. Do we have any requests for telecomment under public expression?
I did not receive any telecomments or any correspondence for
Okay.
public expression.
Well, that's that, and it looks like we have nothing under agenda item 5, consent calendar. So moving on to agenda item 6A on our regular calendar. This is case number OA_2018-0009 and GP 2018-0003. This is the coastal LCP amendment, and I'll turn it over to staff for a presentation.
Thank you, Chair Purnell, and I, Julia Krog, Assistant Director, and I'm actually going to hand it off here to Linda Roofing with North Coast Community Planning, who's our consultant on this project, and we have a presentation that we're going to go through with you.
Thank you, Julia. Good morning, Chair Purnell, members of the Commission. It's a pleasure to be here. As Julia said, I'm Linda Roofing of North Coast Community Planning. I've been working with your staff for a couple of years on a local coastal program amendment to allow accessory dwelling units in the coastal zone. I'd like to start by saying what a pleasure it's been working with your staff, and particularly Assistant Director Julia Krog, who her knowledge and her assistance has just been invaluable in putting together the LCP amendment and especially in negotiating changes with the Coastal Commission staff. So at this point, I'm going to share my screen and pull us through a short presentation here. So are you seeing the presentation?
We're not seeing it yet. Oh, here it is.
You got it? Okay.
Got it.
Great. Let's see. Okay, so I'd like to start with just a little bit of background. Over the past few years, the state legislature has passed a number of housing bills to incentivize the development of accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and junior accessory dwelling units, JADUs, as a means of increasing affordable housing stock throughout the state. In 2018, the county amended its inland zoning code to address the new state legislation, and at that time the Board of Supervisors directed staff to prepare amendments to the local coastal program as well. We assembled an amendment. It was reviewed by the Planning Commission back in July of 2019, and a recommendation was made to the Board of Supervisors at that time to move the amendment forward. I realize, I think Commissioner Wiedemann is the only planning commissioner who was present at that review, but this presentation today is really going to focus on changes to the amendment that have occurred through the process. So in November of 2019, the Board of Supervisors reviewed the LCP amendment and directed that it be submitted to the Coastal Commission. It went through kind of a lengthy process with the Coastal Commission, as is prone to happen, but they finally got it to a hearing in March of this year. And so I'm realizing we've got a typo on this slide. In March of this year, they certified the amendment with suggested modifications to the amendment, and I want to clarify that, like, their suggested modifications are really required modifications. I'll talk about what those suggested modifications are, but the county really does not have an opportunity to modify the suggested modifications without, like, circling back through the LCP amendment process. So the objectives of the LCP amendment. Oh, well, first of all, let me just talk about the purpose of the Planning Commission hearing. So the purpose today is to review the LCP amendment and to consider adoption of a resolution to the Board of Supervisors that recommends that they adopt both the general plan amendment, which is the modifications to the coastal element of the local coastal program, and that they enact an ordinance amending the zoning code, which includes the regulations for implementation of the LCP amendment. Okay, so the objectives of the LCP amendment are numerous. It's first and foremost to create an opportunity for development of accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units in the coastal zone. Under the current LCP that was adopted in 1985, ADUs are not permitted in the coastal zone. To the extent feasible, the board directed that we mirror the county's inland ADU regulations. That being said, because it's the coastal zone, we're required to protect coastal resources and satisfy the Coastal Act requirements for protection of coastal resources, while at the same time attempting to allow for development of as many ADUs as possible. We attempted to create as simple a permitting process as possible, and I think we've achieved that, though in the coastal zone nothing is very simple. And then per state law, we also were required to establish a permitting process that does not require a public hearing. And so we actually have established two different permitting processes, neither of which require public hearings. So I'd like to review the substantive modifications that the Coastal Commission made to the proposed LCP amendment during their certification process. In the coastal element of the general plan, they made two modifications to the amended language that the county had proposed. The first was to clarify that on resource lands, accessory dwelling units must be clustered with the primary residence or located within existing legally authorized residential structures. They wanted this in the actual coastal element, basically to just reiterate that this was one of their primary concerns in addressing ADUs in the coastal zone. And they also included a reference to the caps on the numbers of accessory dwelling units in the coastal zone that were established in the coastal zoning code. And so the caps were 500 ADUs throughout the coastal zone plus 100 ADUs in the Wallala Town Plan area. In the amendment to the LCP implementation program, which is the coastal zoning code, the county requested a number of modifications beyond those that were submitted with the initial LCP amendment language. Some of these were just minor corrections and clarifications and to the initial language, but we also included updates for consistency with new state legislation that was enacted during the process here. So there were changes to some of the definitions. There was language added to address ADUs in multifamily dwellings. We deleted requirements relating to lot coverage, modified the size limitations for ADUs, and clarified the owner occupancy requirements, all to address the state legislation. So in addition, there were a number of substantive modifications that the Coastal Commission added to the LCP amendment during the process. And I'm just going to go through these kind of one by one. They included a requirement that there be an analysis of water and sewer capacity in addition to the analysis of State Route 1 capacity prior to modification of the 100 ADU cap in the Wallala Town Plan area. This was done because there are issues related to, well, certainly to water capacity down in Wallala. They included a provision, or they modified the provision that was in the plan regarding rental of ADUs as vacation home rentals. The amendment that the county submitted had prohibited that the ADUs or JADUs be used as vacation rentals. The Coastal Commission took that one step further and prohibited that any unit on a property with ADUs or JADUs be used as a vacation rental. We actually brought this modification back before the Board of Supervisors earlier this summer, prior to it going to the Commission's hearing, just to get their feedback, and they were supportive of that change. The Commission also included under the coastal resource protections in the zoning code a requirement that ADUs that are located in highly scenic areas must be permanently and entirely blocked from view. And that's for ADUs that are approved through the ministerial process. As I'll explain, there's also provisions in the code that allow for a non-ministerial but another type of coastal permitting process for ADUs that don't meet all of the ministerial standards that are established. The Commission, we really went back and forth on this top requirement here. They required, the counties had proposed that on lands with resource zoning that ADUs be clustered with the primary dwellings and located no more than 150 feet from the existing or proposed residence. The Coastal Commission came back and said 50 feet. We ended up compromising at 100 feet. So that was kind of a win. They also added language clarifying that development associated with ADUs on resource lands like wells and septics, water storage, vegetation removal, driveways, etc., must be clustered within the existing residential development footprint. And they also clarified that ADUs that are located in an accessory structure can only be located in legally authorized accessory structures that exist as of the effective date of the ordinance. And so those are exempted from the clustering requirement, and what they were attempting to prevent was somebody developing a guest cottage or a detached accessory structure that's not clustered and then converting it into an ADU. So we also worked with the commission during this process to create a process where coastal permits for ADUs that could not be approved ministerially because they require subjective interpretation of consistency with the coastal resource protection standards, where those CDPs could be approved without a public hearing. So basically we slipped them into the administrative coastal development permit process and added some different provisions. So those are included in those sections. And basically what we said is that for ADUs being approved administratively, there would be no opportunity to appeal them to the Board of Supervisors. No hearing would be required, but in circumstances where they're appealable to the Coastal Commission, they would be appealable. So that's slightly different than your normal administrative coastal development permit standards. We also added language clarifying the 60-day time period that's established in state legislation for acting on ministerial or administrative coastal development permits. Starts when the application is complete, not when it's submitted, and included the failure to act language in the coastal zoning code that had been worked out with the Coastal Commission when the Mendocino Town Plan Coastal Zoning Code was last updated. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to provide a quick overview of the checklist requirements for the ministerial review of CDPs as well as just the overall requirements for the ADUs, as I realized that most of the commission wasn't part of the earlier review process. So for ministerially approved CDPs, they need to kind of meet all of these requirements. They need to be at least 100 feet from the edge of an environmentally sensitive habitat area. They need to be at least 125 feet from the edge of a coastal bluff unless they're within an existing permitted structure. If they're in a highly scenic area, they can't be visible. They need to be like permanently invisible from a public road, trail, beach, park, or waters. There needs to be less than 20 cubic yards of grading, and they need to be consistent with policies for protection of agricultural and timber resources. So those are the clustering requirements that I referred to earlier. And then generally with ADUs, there can be no more than one other accessory living unit on a parcel. So accessory living units are like guest cottages or detached bedrooms or a family care unit. They need to conform to the height limits, setbacks, parking requirements, and other development standards in the code. There are floor area limitations for a detached ADU. It's 1,200 square feet. For an attached ADU, it's 1,200 square feet or no more than 50% of the existing dwelling, but then there's also kind of minimum size provisions depending on the number of bedrooms. They need to have clearance from environmental health on water and septic, or if they're in a water district or sewer district from that agency. They need a preliminary clearance letter from CAL FIRE and the local fire district that they're in. They're prohibited in flood hazard areas. In the Wallala Town Plan area, they're prohibited on parcels west of State Route 1, and that's consistent with the existing Wallala Town Plan requirements. And again, vacation home rentals are prohibited on properties with an ADU or a junior accessory dwelling unit. So that's kind of the requirements in a nutshell. In terms of process from here, after today's hearing, we are hoping to take this to the Board of Supervisors in early November. Their process involves adoption of a resolution approving the general plan amendment, and then they have a two-step process for adoption of an ordinance amending the coastal zoning code. And then once they've taken action, that actually all gets packaged up and sent back to the Coastal Commission, who will confirm that what was adopted is consistent with the amendment that the Coastal Commission certified. And then they do their executive director checkoff, and the certification and amendment process is complete. Our expectation is that this will go back to the Coastal Commission in February of next year, and at that point the county can begin accepting applications and processing them for accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. So our recommended action today is that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution recommending to the Board of Supervisors that they approve the local coastal program amendment, which consists of both the general plan amendment and the zoning code amendment to establish regulations for ADUs and JADUs in the coastal zone. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Linda. Are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner Pollan.
Thank you, Chair Purnell. Thank you, Linda, for that presentation. I really appreciate it. I just had a couple big picture questions. One is, so I noticed in the updated ordinance, there are times when it's a ministerial permit, and there's times when it's an administrative permit, and then there's times when it would be a larger permit, I guess, coming before the Planning Commission. And I'm just curious, what triggers which pathway these permits travel down?
That's a really good question. So, and I'm going to answer it just relevant to ADUs, though maybe at some point like we could have a training on permitting in the coastal zone, because the Planning Commission will never see an ADU permit. Though there are other coastal permits in the coastal zone when they're associated with an action like a use permit that would come to the coastal or to the Planning Commission. For accessory dwelling units, they are eligible for a ministerial process, which is, our hope is to literally establish a checklist where somebody can submit an application, the planner can review it for completeness, check off, like it's more than 100 feet from an environmentally sensitive habitat area. Just go down the checklist and say, this is consistent, approved. It doesn't go to anybody. It just gets approved at a staff level. That's the ministerial process. However, there are some requirements where if you can't meet the checklist requirement, which is like, it's objective, it's like more than 100 feet from an environmentally sensitive habitat, it's more than 125 feet from the bluff. If you can't meet it, you still can potentially get a permit for an ADU. However, it needs to go through a more analytical process that's akin to your regular coastal development permit process to ensure that the resources are protected and that the findings that are established in your code can be met. And so that process would be the coastal development administrative permit process. It's a little more complicated. It still does not involve a public hearing. The neighbors would be notified, but the decision would be made by the coastal permit administrator. It's not appealable to the Board of Supervisors. In some instances, if it's in an appealable area, which is basically everything west of Highway 1, in a highly scenic area, within 100 feet of an ESHA, like the appealable areas, then it's appealable to the Coastal Commission as well.
Okay. And that touches on my second question. And you mentioned this in your presentation, and I was reading it in the ordinance as well. But so ADUs and JADUs will never be appealable to, I'm just thinking of this situation, and I understand that we want to encourage these and we want to, not fast track them, but make them smooth, streamlined for people that want to do them. But I also imagine there might be moments where neighbors or other members of the public could have a concern about the granting of an ADU, especially if it's a detached structure. But it appears that there is no mechanism for appealing that unless it is in one of those areas that you just identified, in which case it would be appealable to the Coastal Commission, but not to the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that was the intent of the state legislation, was basically to remove the opportunity for NIMBYs to object to ADUs. So the legislation requires that they be approved ministerially, which does not allow for the opportunity for appeal. Now, we did create a separate, the Coastal Development Administrative, but like a ministerial permit or for an ADU cannot be appealed to anyone. It's only the ones where there is some exercise of subjective judgment that go forward.
Right.
Be appealed to the Coastal Commission.
Okay. And then my only other questions were around some language that looked like was suggested by, I guess two more questions. One was, I noticed in the comments that came back from the Coastal Commission, particularly comment number 7, there was concern raised about the 500 unit allotment and the 100 unit allotment in Wallala, that there wasn't necessarily a justification for that particular number. And they were citing the need for really understanding what the, I guess this is having to do with climate change and other impacts of the vehicle miles traveled. And they were saying, why is there just sort of this blanket number put forth? I assume that they're satisfied with the rationale for why that was put in there if they have signed off on it at this point. Is that?
Yeah, so what we didn't include in your packet, we included their 13-page letter of comments in response to the initial submittal, but we didn't include the stacks of documentation that we provided in response to those comments. So they were satisfied with the documentation that we provided, which was, we had some analysis of build out potential in the coastal zone based on studies that the county has done previously, as well as previous studies and updates to the State Route 1 capacity study. But we also included information about the status of the implementation of, I'm forgetting the Senate bill number, but the one that required the VMT, the vehicle miles traveled analysis. They were satisfied with the 500 unit cap and the 100 unit cap. Okay,
great. And then my last question, and this is maybe a little persnickety, but is on some of the noticing requirements under both the ministerial and the administrative permit. There was a change from the action the director as designee his or her designee may approve to shall act on. And then, so my question on that is shall act on is basically saying if it meets the criteria for the ministerial permit, then it shall act upon means automatic approval. If it's the administrative process, then there's some discretion there. And I guess my question in the noticing part was, it seems that regardless of what the action is taken by the director, in that case, that the notice has to go out, and there's notice sent to a whole list of people, including the county assessor. And if the action is a denial, in the case of an administrative permit, or I guess in the case of a ministerial permit, if they don't meet the requirements, is that noticing requirement still triggered, or is a notice still sent out to all those interested parties that this was denied, or is this only in the case of an approval? Because
that's a great question, and that was kind of a last minute change that was made by the Coastal Commission staff, who they didn't like the shall approve, because they were like, actually, you can deny, like we don't want you to, and that was existing language in the code. And so it was modified to say shall act on, to leave the kind of universe of options open. But if, I'm going to have to look at that, Commissioner Pollan, and I'll get back.
It was an interesting trigger that it seems like that the notice requirement happens regardless, but if it's denied, I don't understand why we would have to notice the universe about that.
Yeah.
And I think, just see if there's anything else that, okay, there was another, and again, this is a little persnickety and I apologize, but there was some language in Exhibit A, and I guess this refers back to it, but they're talking about the detached ADUs may only be permitted if they're located within an existing legally authorized residential structure. I don't understand, how do you have a detached ADU that exists within an existing structure? Am I just misunderstanding the terminology there?
So the definition of an existing legally authorized residential structure actually includes residential accessory structures. So it would include a guest cottage. It would include a detached bedroom. It would even, I'm gonna have to look at this, but I'm pretty sure it even includes like a garage.
Garage, right. So a detached ADU doesn't necessarily mean a newly constructed structure. It simply means, in that case, it would be the conversion.
Exactly.
Okay. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Questions from other commissioners?
I'd be happy to go next if that's okay.
It's all yours.
Okay, thanks. So I just wanted to follow up really quick on what Commissioner Pollan said and note that you do have a typo that you might want to fix on page, let me find it, page 21. D, it says notice for the coastal development administrator intends to approve, act on. So obviously the approve should have been struck out at some point and didn't get struck out. So it might just cause confusion. So that's a super minor thing, but I just thought I'd point it out so you could snag it before you go back.
Thank you.
And then I had kind of a bigger question, and that is the prohibition of approving new ADUs if you have more than 2 detached bedrooms. I don't see anything in state law that would basically allow the county to do that, because you're essentially saying that someone who's decided to have 2 detached bedrooms, maybe they have an elderly parent in one and a teenage son in the other that they just can't stand living with, now they can't have an ADU. And from my reading of ADU law, I don't see how that's possible. So I guess that's kind of a super fundamental question that maybe you want to talk with the commission about how to address that. I understand why you want to do it, but I'm just not sure it's legal. That's the only thing. Like, I don't see the authority for it anywhere. Maybe somebody else has that authority someplace. So that was one of my major concerns. And then I have a lot of smaller concerns that I guess I'll just wait until after the public comment period to bring up. If we're having a public comment period, I'm assuming we are, Chair Parnell. This is just for questions. Yeah. And then just one other observation. I know working with the Coastal Commission is challenging, to say the least, and a long and drawn out process. As you and I both know from the LCP amendment for the city of Fort Bragg in 2008. I have noticed by looking at HCD's website that a number of additional second unit laws have come forth, and some of those provisions are not included in this. And I don't know if it's worth it to try and have a quick conversation with them and get them in now, so you don't have to go through this whole process again to include them. And then the last comment I guess I have is, as you know, Mendocino County has myriad huge numbers of illegal second units that have been constructed over the past 4 years. And I worry a little bit about the silence in this ordinance with regard to those structures, because I expect that some of those structures may not have been developed within the footprint of the existing primary residential unit. And so you're essentially going to offer no path forward for those structures to become legalized. And I mean, I just know, like on my own street, I can count off 20 illegal second units that I just know exist. Like that's just on my street. And so I feel like that's a big missing piece in here that would be great to try and address. And maybe the take-home lesson for this, and yes, please answer, Linda. Maybe the Coastal Commission didn't want to address it. I don't know. But it would be great in the future if we're having major legislative activities like this, that you come back to the commission once or twice before it's like a done deal, so we can weigh in, because we're on this commission for a reason. We care and we bring a lot of really, really cheap technical expertise to the table. And it'd be great to use it.
Right. So thank you, Commissioner Jones. I just wanted to clarify that the requirement for clustering only applies to ADUs on resource zone plans, not on rural residential or other zoning classifications.
Great. That's great. And did you have a conversation with either the attorneys or the Coastal Commission about the detached bedrooms and whether or not they were a legal trigger to not allow an ADU to be constructed?
Not specifically the question that you asked. I think the question, and I would defer this to Matt, to County Council, is whether the state ADU legislation allows for a limiting of the number of accessory structures on a parcel. Like off the top of my head, I would say probably it does, just based on public health and safety issues. But I don't know, Matt, do you have an answer to that?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski. I don't have an answer to that direct question, and my guess is the Coastal Commission is looking to the kind of the balancing of interest between the authority it has under the Coastal Act versus the legislature's similar acts on a similar level regarding ADUs in terms of what's obligated there versus what the interests are in the coastal zone. So I'd have to look further into that, but that's where I think this kind of sticking point might be, is, you know, how far can the authority under the Coastal Commission and the Coastal Act counteract some of the requirements in their ADU law.
And if I may just add on, underneath our accessory use regulations in the coastal zone, there already is limitations on the number of accessory living units that you can have. That has been in the LCP since when it was adopted and certified. So this is really building off of what's in there, because I believe, and I apologize, I was just trying to pull it up in front of me, and I can pull that up. But I believe there's a limitation when you have accessory living units on your property about what other additional residential structures you may be able to have, such as temporary use type of residential structures, family care units, farm labor housing, farm employee housing. But I'll look that up and be able to respond more fully to that after the public comment.
And then I guess I have one last question, and that is, has this ordinance been passed by HCD for their review and approval? I'm not sure if they require review and approval for project ordinances in the coastal zone or not, but I know in the inland area they do.
So we have sent it to HCD. Actually, we've sent it a couple of times as it's been updated. We have not received comments back from them, but it is required to be submitted to them once it's passed by the Board of Supervisors.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so I guess it's my turn. So I just really have one question. Everybody kind of touched on it. It's more of a procedural question. When things like this get amended and they come before us, have they gone through county council, and has county council read this to make sure that it's legally written and that it's not vague and ambiguous and that it's appropriate before it gets to us? Because I'm a lawyer and I read it and all my legal I try not to be a lawyer in this like fashion, but when I read this and I see stuff, it triggers some things. So I want to know, I mean, does this go before county council before it even comes to us to make sure that it's properly written?
Right. So I'll respond to that, and then maybe county council will. But yes, it's been reviewed extensively by both county council's office and the Coastal Commission's council.
Thank you. That and then not Chair Parnell, but Jones really asked many questions that I had. So, and then, I guess I want to know what a highly scenic area is. I didn't see a definition for that anywhere in the definitions. The definitions just kind of stop at L and there are no more. And then there wasn't a definition for highly scenic area. And that phrase is used quite frequently throughout the granting or denying, a location. And so I think that somewhere there needs to be some, because I don't know what you think is a highly scenic area is totally different from what I might think one is. So I'd like county council to think maybe there might be a definition for that, because that left me confused and I felt like it was vague and ambiguous.
Okay, so if I can just respond to that, you are reviewing the actual changes to the zoning code. There's a lot of code around it that wasn't. Okay. That's not there. So the definitions don't stop at L, but the definitions that are being stop at L.
But that definition, highly scenic area, is not in there.
Highly scenic areas in the coastal zone are mapped.
Okay.
And the maps were established by the Coastal Commission when the original LCP was established.
Thank you. I knew there had to be something very simple I was missing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it from me.
Commissioner Wiedemann?
I'm actually very fine with this, and I would like to keep moving it forward. It had, previously we did a lot of work on this, probably it's almost 2 years now, that I actually think the intent was well worked out. I was happy with the actually minor changes from the Coastal Commission staff, from our county's intent that we sent to them. So I'm very supportive of this document. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I just had one question in light of what we just heard from code enforcement about the new 4290 process with regards to CAL FIRE. I'm wondering if that changes some of the requirements in here for the CAL FIRE preliminary clearance requirements. And if so, we may just want to update that or at least recommend to the board that it be updated.
Julia Krog, Assistant Director. I don't think it'll cause any sort of challenge, because really what we're talking about is the building permit process and a change in that timing. Still, there would be for discretionary permits where folks would still need to consult with CAL FIRE prior to those discretionary permits. It's only for the building permit process that has been modified or would be modified.
Great. Just wanted to make sure that we're maintaining consistency there. And I also looked through the the lengthy letter from the Coastal Commission to County of Mendocino. And I understand that we don't have all the technical responses to that, and I thank you for that. But I was wondering if you could give us a brief summary on some of the responses. You already touched on the justification for the 500 unit cap. I was also curious, and again, a brief summary will suffice, but just for the benefit of the commission and for the public, I'm curious to learn a little bit about how ADUs will be tracked and how you were able to satisfy the issues around adequacy of water and sewer.
Good question. So I'll start with the response, and then Julia, feel free to chime in. So with the tracking, the Planning and Building Services Department will establish a tracking system where applications for ADUs are logged. They are tracked in terms of whether they're approved ministerially, denied, or go through a coastal development administrative permit. They'll track, where they're located, the size of them, whether they're JADUs or ADUs, when the permits are issued, and that will be reported to the Coastal Commission probably annually. But the purpose of the tracking is both to continue to get an understanding of how these regulations are being implemented, but also so that we can report on the caps and get a sense of when we're going to be bumping up against the caps.
And also, just an FYI, there's a new state law that passed that does not allow for off-site improvements for ADUs, so that may impact what CAL FIRE can require when an ADU is constructed.
Right, and so Commissioner or Chair Purnell had one other question, which was how we resolve the issues around concerns with water and sewer or septic availability. And those are addressed in the LCP amendment, just requiring environmental health sign-off. We had, in the original LCP amendment, included references to the standards that environmental health uses in making those determinations. The Coastal Commission actually did not want those references to their standards in the LCP because they indicated that they would then need to actually certify those documents, and any changes to those documents that normally would be made administratively would have to go through an LCP amendment process. So they ended up eliminating that verbiage and just requiring the environmental health sign off.
So that'll be done then just on a case-by-case basis, project by project.
Right, and basically implementing the standards that the department has.
Okay.
For proof of water.
Thank you for that. And I saw that Commissioner Wiedemann did have another question.
Yeah, I just wanted to also, I think it was Commissioner Jones who spoke about, well, gee, there's a lot of existing second units, so to speak, or what could be ADUs. Part of the big discussion here was of that 500 units that are being allowed, right? We're hoping that, and I'm really hoping that even the county has some way to get the information out to those what are not really legal, to have them come into the system so we can also be getting, property tax. They could be recognized and they would be part of that 500. And I think, I just want to reiterate, it's important for us to come up with the marketing plan to have that happen. And that's what I wanted to say.
Great. Are there any questions, any additional questions for Linda Roofing before we go to public comment? Okay, seeing none, I do believe that we will move toward public comment. Do we have, well, I'll just read the thing. When called to speak, please state your name for the record. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Speakers are asked to please address their comments to the meeting chair and to refrain from using profanity or engaging in conversation with members of the audience or staff. And with that, I will open public comment and ask staff if we have anybody on the line.
No, we do not have anybody that sent in a telecomment form that wanted to speak.
Okay, we will be closing public comment and I want to see if staff or our consultant have any final remarks.
I did just want to respond to Commissioner Jones's question, and so I just was flipping through the ordinance here and now remember why we had the limitation regarding the guest cottage or detached bedroom. Because we classified ADUs and junior ADUs as accessory living units. So underneath the accessory use regulations, there already was a limitation on only being allowed to have one on your property. That's why that limitation on one was carried forward. So that way that you're only able to have the primary residence and the ADU or junior ADU as an accessory living unit on the site.
And if I can clarify, actually, you can have a JADU and ADU plus one accessory living unit. So we kept it in the code and allowed for the state requirements.
I just forwarded you an email from
Great, thank you. I think at this point, we are going to bring this item back to the commission. And Commissioner Jones, it sounded like you had a number of items that you wanted to go through. Are you ready to do that now?
Sure, and I recognize that it's a little bit of an exercise in futility because correcting these things at this late date would cause more consternation than needed. But just for the sake of, I don't know, I just have to say it because they triggered me when I read them, and I like really clean language and thinking about things. So on page 11 of the track changes, you're requiring that the certificate of occupancy for the ADU must only be issued after the certificate of occupancy for the primary dwelling. And I understand why you did that. I think practically it makes it much more challenging for people who might want to build a primary unit and a secondary unit, but initially maybe can only afford to build the secondary unit, and so they want to live in that while they build the primary unit. And I don't think that it necessarily gets the county anything by having that prohibition, because the reality is if someone is going through the process and has gotten a coastal development permit for a primary unit, they've jumped through all the hoops. So not allowing them to occupy the secondary ADU prior to occupancy of the primary just seems unnecessary and complicating for people with their varied, interesting lives. And then on page 12, when you're talking about the ADU shall not be allowed if more than one dwelling unit or more than one guest cottage or more than one detached bedroom is on the parcel. I think it would be clearer if it said and you also included more than one before the detached bedroom, because sometimes planners read things very literally, and not having the and the more than one may make someone read it as having just one detached bedroom is a problem, and therefore you cannot have a second unit. So I just really think it's important to have super clarity. I did find it interesting that, and actually agree with the Coastal Commission's decision not to allow either the primary or secondary unit to be rented as a vacation rental. I think that is the right way to go, since this ordinance is basically being done to increase the amount of housing stock. I did find it interesting that you guys included an abandonment or expirement clause for people who already have second units, that their vacation home rental licenses would become extinct, I guess, in a way. So sorry. People are always calling me. And believe it or not, I had my silent mode on. So let's see. Also, the design review issue for ADUs on page 15. I guess for me, I would have been happy with just building materials and colors, or maybe even just colors, not being so prescriptive around that the actual architectural style had to be matched, especially if it's hidden from view. It seems like a little bit overdone. And I know I'm just doing this for my own gratification, but there you go. I get to. And then the requirement of a coastal development and admin CDP if there's known archaeological resources on the site. It just seems like a big hoop to jump through. If you have an ARC study, you can just look at it and figure out if someone's project is going to be impacting it or not, and include mitigations in the building permit. But maybe the tribes wanted that. On page 19, item G, it refers to subsection C above, and I just want to make sure that was correct. It didn't flow for me, but that may be because I don't have enough knowledge about what subsection C is referring to. And then my last comment is on page 20. This item number B, it seems to apply very clearly for projects that include both a primary residential unit and a secondary unit. It's not totally clear for me when the 60-day time period would be triggered if there's a pre-existing single-family residence. And I assume it would be when you issued a coastal development permit exemption notice to the Coastal Commission, saying that it was exempt. But I just think that could have been a little bit clearer, because I got confused. Then I read it again, read a third time. And I was like, okay, I think this is what they're doing. I'm not totally sure. And that was it. And thank you for listening to me blab on. But it's overall fabulous job. Really excited to see it get done. I know a lot of people there's a lot of pent up demand around this one. Linda and I did a ADU little confab back at Jug Handle a year and a half ago, and we had over 120 people come. There was standing room only. That's how much interest there is. So I think this is really great work, and thank you guys for getting it done. I know it was a slog. Sorry for my last minute comments, but I couldn't help myself.
It seems like, Commissioner Jones, several of your comments were intended to be clarifying in nature and not necessarily to make changes. And I'm wondering if we should take the time to go through those to see if those changes can be made without substantively changing this. Linda, do you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. And let me just say that, like, changes that are very minor, like the correction that you noted, where we left a word in, are not a problem. And we've actually found a couple of them since the Coastal Commission's action to certify the document that the changes are reflected in here. So that change on page 21, strike approved, like not a problem. One of the things that I do want to note is that I think all of the language that you addressed, Commissioner Jones, is language that's shown as red line in your document, which are the changes that were made by the Coastal Commission or were the friendly amendments. Those are the suggested mods. What's black in your documents, the black underline, is the original LCP amendment. I'm not sure that I tracked all of Commissioner Jones's comments, and the one that I missed is actually the one that I think it would be the easiest to change, which was your one about the and/or. I think it was your second comment. But Marie, if you could just
yeah, so that's on page 12 of the track changes under A, under section 20.458.025. It's like halfway down the page, and it's under A. And these are actually, this is black text, not red text.
Our original. Okay.
So I would just add and or if there currently exists more than one guest cottage and or more than one detached bedroom on the parcel. I actually kind of like 2 or more
Right. Okay.
myself.
Yeah. I mean, that's one that we can definitely float to the Coastal Commission, and it doesn't change the
Right.
what
It
the-
clarifies.
Exactly. Now, you did have a comment on page 11 about the certificate of occupancy
Right.
not being issued, and that's a really good point. I think it's one that it's substantive. I don't think we could take it out here. And, the Coastal Commission added this language in, and I don't think that we just wrapped our head around that circumstance where you build a primary residence and then you want to convert it into an ADU as you build your actual bigger residence. So that's one we can talk to the Coastal Commission about. It might be an opportunity next time the county does an amendment to just add it in. It seems to me like one that would be a de minimis coastal development permit amendment, not a big deal, but we'll check with them. So can you just walk us through the other ones?
Okay. I didn't expect to get this kind of attention, but I appreciate it. So one that I didn't mention actually was on page 4, which is the definition of an efficiency kitchen. And I actually don't think you need a definition because for the junior ADU, you're requiring that they only have 500 square feet. So by definition, they'll have a small kitchen. This reduces the review requirement of staff. And I can see a situation where someone has a house and they have a kitchen and they want to build a new kitchen and create an ADU with the old kitchen. And your staff might not think it's de minimis enough. And so now they're faced with remodeling a kitchen. I mean, let's say it's my mother and she's moving in and she loves cooking. Why would I want to give her a crappy kitchen? I don't know. To me, it seems like a little bit of overreach. And since you have a limitation on 500 square feet, I don't think you need it.
Yeah, so this was included originally because the state legislation actually had requirements relating to the heat source for appliances. The changes were made based on changes to state legislation. I don't know at this stage of the game that we would want to take it out.
Yeah.
I'd also like to say, I don't read that as being prohibitive of not a good kitchen, right? I have a different take on that. I don't see that as it's, a negative.
It says a small food preparation area.
Right.
And that cabinets that are of reasonable size in relationship to the size of the junior ADU. So that leaves a discretionary process by a planning staff deciding whether or not a kitchen is the right size or not. And I can definitely see a situation where someone's got a house and they have a pre-existing condition and they don't necessarily want to pull cabinets out of it. They just want to, you know what I'm saying? And then build a different kitchen.
I do. I just don't read it in the same restrictive way. So I'm just letting it's
fine. Yeah.
Right.
But someone else will read it in the same restrictive way. Diana.
To Commissioner Jones's point of this will be interpreted many ways, but it also sounds like we're not making any changes to this today. So I think it's probably a moot point.
Exactly.
But you had something on page 19 as well, didn't you? On section G about whether or not it actually related to subsection C.
Yeah, which it does.
It does.
Okay. Cross-reference.
And then the other question was, do we really need a coastal development permit, administrative coastal development permit, if there are known archaeological sites on a property? Most of the time, if you're doing an ADU within the existing developable area, which is already required, I think, then there wouldn't be an ARC site issue.
Yeah, this was added by the Coastal Commission staff. They feel like we do.
That's fine. It is what it is. And then my last question was just around design review, and that was also added by the Coastal Commission. It just,
right.
It's just strange to me because I can see a situation where someone has a crappy ranch and now you have to do a crappy ranch ADU. I don't know. Maybe you don't want to do that. Just saying. You always got to look at the unintended consequences.
Once again, I interpret that a little different. I do these things, and I think it's a broader stroke. Yes, I think the point is because it's the coastal zone, right? And there are a lot of hoops. I think it's really like, I hear what you're saying, Commissioner Jones, but I also feel like there's still going to be latitude of coming up with creative designs for your ADUs.
Yeah. Again, you're leaving it up to
I mean,
staff.
they may not want you to do a pyramid, right?
And it may not matter if you do a pyramid, if
I agree. I agree, but I didn't write. The LP is a really complicated.
Yeah. So
I hear you.
And then my last clarification is on page 20, and that's for item number B. Just to clarify, for situations where an ADU is being built where there is an existing single family residence, what is the trigger for the 60-day time period? And I really enjoyed reading this. Overall, fabulous job. Sorry to be picky. It's just my nature.
So I guess I'm not understanding the concern there, because if you have an existing single family residence that just exists, then you have the 60-day time period. This is for circumstances where you're applying for both at the same time. It's clarifying that the application for the ADU will not be, the 60-day time period doesn't commence until after your permit, whether it's a coastal permit or an exemption or whatever for the primary residence, has been acted upon.
I understand that, but then the ordinance is silent on my second point, which is when you have a pre-existing primary unit and you do an ADU, when does the 60-day period start? And maybe that's super obvious, and we don't need to spell it out, but everything else is spelled out. So it just seemed like
well, the first sentence says action shall be taken within 60 days.
Of an application.
Of an application for a coastal development permit. Well, you're not getting a coastal development permit if you're doing an ADU.
Yeah, you are. You're getting a ministerial coastal development permit or an administrative coastal development permit.
Yeah.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay. I missed that. Sorry.
Okay, so that one seems like it's settled. Is there anything else for conversation before I ask for a motion?
Nothing from me, there may be from others.
Okay, I don't see anything from others, so I do believe we're looking for a motion on this.
I'll make a motion. Chair?
Yes, please.
Oh, yes. I make a motion to approve resolution number PC 2021. Is there a number, Julia?
It's OA 2018-0009.
Okay.
And
So
GP
I'll read that again.
2018-3.
I'll read that again. I make a motion to approve resolution GP 2018-0003/0A 2018-0009. And as the resolution of the Planning Commission, County of Mendocino, State of California, making its report and recommendation to the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors regarding proposed amendments to the Mendocino County General Plan Coastal Element, Chapters 3.2, 3.3, and 3.9, and Mendocino County Code, Chapters 20.308, 20.316, 20.456, 20.458, 20.472, 20.532, 20.536 and 20.544 related to accessory dwelling units.
You get an award just for reading all that off, Diana. I'll second that, subject to the comments that I made, if possible, if they get incorporated.
So with that, it sounds like the second is wanting to amend the motion just ever so slightly to include that language, the and/or language. Is the maker of the motion in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay. So I do have, if the commission would like, before taking a vote, I've been working on a little red line just to include that for the resolution. I'm unsure if it's such a minor change that the commission doesn't wish to see that on the screen beforehand, or if you would like for us to share that on the screen regarding that change just to the and/or in section 20.458.025A.
No, I don't. As the person who read the numbers, I'm fine with it if the rest of the commission is, not to see it.
I don't need to see it.
I guess Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I'd recommend it at least being read into the record as an addition to the resolution. And if it's easy to see it on a screen, that's
Okay.
easier than reading it.
All right, then let's see it.
Okay, give me just a second here, because I'm going to share from my laptop here. So give me just a moment here. You're going to see me pop up on the screen here as joining, and then I'll be able to share my screen. All right, there I am. Okay, let me go ahead and share screen. So what I have here is you see you have the resolution that was prepared for the item, and then adding a fourth clause here under now therefore be it resolved that would state that the Planning Commission recommends that the Board of Supervisors adopt Ordinance Amendment and General Plan Amendment OA 2018-9/GP 2018-3, recommending the following additional changes. Consider modification of the wording in section 20.458.025A to include an and/or regarding if there currently exists more than one dwelling unit on the parcel and/or guest cottage and/or detached bedroom. And that would be the extent of the changes. Are there any concerns with that language?
And or more than one detached bedroom. And then you also wanted to strike approve on page 21, the extra language. That's 20.536.005D.
That language was just the word approved, right? Approved.
Yeah. And then I would also still love it if you guys could talk to the Coastal Commission about allowing someone to have occupancy of their secondary dwelling unit prior to their primary.
Julia, maybe for item B and your changes there, you can just say correct typo.
Yeah. I think that's a good one.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, it's fine to add that, but I think that realistically is not something we have to mention. It was already shown in strike through.
Okay, so I think that
you're looking, Deputy County Counsel, you're looking at a different approved. That's E5. The one I'm talking about is on D.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
okay, so I think that was the changes here, and then staff, I think we'll take that as direction to discuss with the Coastal Commission about any potential change on the occupancy aspect, but you know, that may be something, as Linda had previously stated, that may need to be handled at a future date. So with no other changes, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Julia. And are we waiting for a roll call vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiedemann,
Yes.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Morris,
Yes.
Chair Purnell.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously, 5-0.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for all the work, years of work on this.
Yeah, I'd like to say a big thank you to
We have Exhibit E, we have Exhibit B.
Say that again, Commissioner Wiedemann?
We have Exhibit B amendment to approve.
Oh no, the motion that was made and the action.
It's inclusive. Okay, great. I wanted to, great. Wonderful then.
All
Great
right.
work. It was a lot of work, but good work and long time coming for the coast to figure out our housing. Lack of long-term housing here.
Yeah, it will help on many fronts, both the prohibition on the transient
Vacation rent.
occupancy
Yeah.
and
We're
the 500.
getting hammered here.
Yep.
Great. Well, moving on to agenda item 7 is matters from staff.
Okay, great. So I do have some updates for the commission today on items that you have previously requested. I believe it was from September 2nd agenda, and some that had happened prior to that. So the items that I had on my list from the commission were discussion about desire to meet in person, presentation on water resources and the Groundwater Sustainability Act, update on the cannabis program, bylaws update, and then also projects that are planned to come before the commission. So I have an update on a couple items today for you, and then we will be agendizing also a couple for the next planning commission meeting on the 21st of October. So first off on the bylaws update discussion, and then also the projects to come before the commission, we will have that agendized on the October 21st agenda. And I do just want to give the commission a heads up that on the spreadsheet that I've created related to projects that are going to come before the commission, there really cannot be any discussion of that spreadsheet because it could be considered prejudgment on your behalf if you are asking questions about the project prior to it coming before you while it's in sort of the deliberation and processing stage. So it'll be an informational only type of item. And so I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. But those two items will be on the October 21st agenda. And then for the water presentation, I've been in touch with Amber Fizette, and they are at the point where they have just finished working with their consultant and are almost ready to submit the Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Plan. And so they are more than happy to come and do a presentation to the commission on that specific plan. But in terms of other general sort of water resources discussion, there's a few things in the works right now where it may not quite be time to bring forward a full discussion on water because right now the county is working on hiring a consultant to support the county water agency that would have hydrologists come on board as well as subject matter experts. So I think in the coming months, there would actually be a much more productive conversation, but I want to make sure that any specific questions or topic areas that the Planning Commission wanted addressed as part of water would be included in a future presentation. So I wanted to ask if the commissioners would be willing to individually email me with what their questions and or topic areas they would like to see covered in a presentation on water resources are. That way we can make sure we have the most productive presentation and we have all the appropriate people at the table, or also plan if we need to split it up into a couple different presentations to the commission. But what you will see coming forward in the coming months is going to be the presentation on the Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Plan. And that I'm just waiting to hear back as to what date could work for the consultant that prepared that document to come and present to the commission. So hopefully I'll have an update at the next meeting with when that will be on the agenda. And then the other item, I just wanted to check in with the commission. I know I had responded on the cannabis program, letting you know that there had been a referendum filed that had received enough signatures on the Chapter 22.18, and on September 14th, the Board of Supervisors did repeal that ordinance. So I wanted to check in if there was a desire for any additional presentations or discussion on the cannabis program, so I could work on getting that agendized if need be.
I would like to have a presentation on what pathways are currently open and what the timeline is for opening those. I don't know about other commissioners, but I field a number of questions from people in my district about what's going on, and I'm not able to answer even a single one of their questions about what's going on. So just even like just a survey of what the pathways are, what the timelines are, and even I think it would be helpful to know what the knowns are as well as the unknowns. Like, it's fair that there are unknowns, but we just need to know what is known and what is unknown at this time.
Sure, and I will work with the cannabis program manager on that. And as you know, the cannabis program, it's extremely dynamic. So, you know, any presentation, it may change with, you know, a board meeting where additional direction is received. And since the repeal of 22.18 is rather fresh, there still is discussions internally, and then probably future discussions with the board as well on how to proceed forward with what the phase 3 for new cultivation activities. So, but we will work to get that agendized. I had wanted to check in just to get a scope of what kind of additional update or questions the commission had, and then I will get Kristen Nevedal with the cannabis program and get her available so we could do a presentation and discussion with the commission. Now, that probably won't be on the 21st agenda because I imagine it'd be a longer discussion, so I would probably look to schedule that sometime in November, subject to Kristen's availability.
Great. Commissioner Wiedemann?
What I would like to see, and I'm not sure where it needs to come out of, but there's a lot of misinformation being written about the work we did to send to the Board of Supervisors. And I really feel like I really want to get the information. Somehow I feel like once again, it's a marketing issue. It's just amazing to me to read all the papers and hear people on news shows, and it's totally misinformed. It's almost like our work never got out to the public. And I feel I feel it would help the issue. That's all. That what we moved forward after much work and discussion and compromises was totally the public was totally misinformed. So I don't know how to deal with that part, and I would like a path that for the future we can have something that is we either publish something, put it in the papers online. I don't know, but it did us a disservice. I feel like it did the whole issue a disservice. So anybody have anything that we could try to mitigate that in the future?
Yeah, I have a suggestion. Maybe Diana, one of us could write a letter that summarizes what we did. And then as a group, we could, similar to the Board of Supervisors, agree that the letter, refers to or correctly summarizes our actions, and then just submit it to the paper under all of our signatures.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Godrowski, we could try and agendize that for, I think, for next meeting, we could attempt to say, okay, we'll have an agenda item talking about this issue, and then authorizing, I think, an ad hoc could draft the letter and bring it back to the commission for approval. I think that'd be the way that could happen.
Commissioner Pollan, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Chair Purnell. Yeah, Julia, as you're writing things down to bring to Kristen to bring back to us, one of the big questions that arises for me is what happens to people who currently have a provisional permit and what's going to happen with their state licensure. I know there's been some amendments to state legislation that's granted some extension of timeline, but those are questions that I'm hearing from people in my district. Is for people that feel that they're doing it illegally right now, is that going to hold water come 2022?
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, I have one other comment, and that is about the consulting team you hired to do the Land Use and Development Code update, Julia.
Mhm.
I think it would be great for us to have an understanding of the proposed scope of work for that activity, and then also the schedule and how we will be fit into the schedule in terms of providing input so that it doesn't come to us at the end. And to that end, I would seriously like the Planning Commission to consider, and also the staff, to consider climate change and how our zoning ordinance can be more friendly to climate change mitigation projects, such as installing solar, water tanks, other things such as that. And then also just a general, I think we need a climate change chapter in the general plan. I'd like to see that anyway. So that's my comment, because I know that's brewing, and so it'd be nice to be involved in the brewing of it early rather than at the end. Thank you.
Okay, and I think that's, the update on where the Planning Commission will fit into some of the kickoff meeting and such with the consultant for the zoning code update inland. That's something we can easily get to you. So I'll try to get that together for the next meeting too, to give you a schedule about that.
Great. And Julia, one more thing on the cannabis front. This gets into a specific question. I have heard rumblings about the old ordinance being revised to incorporate a discretionary permitting opportunity in there. I don't know if that's actually happening. So if that could be addressed, including what the role of the Planning Commission may be, if any, in future permitting.
Sure, I can say right now we do not yet have that direction to do that. I have heard similar rumblings of that. I think those were in some comment letters presented to the board when the ordinance 22.18 was repealed. But we have not yet received formal direction to work on that. But I will make notes so we can include that as part of the presentation. So.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay,
Julia,
that.
anything else to add as far as what you'll be bringing forward to the commission, or any input that you're looking for from the commission at this time?
No, I think that was really it. And so just to summarize, if the commission can let me know, just email me, individually, and about any specific topics you want covered in a water presentation on water resources and such. That would be very helpful, so we can make sure that it's the most productive sort of conversation. I have the right people at the table then.
Great, thank you. And does the commission have any questions for Julia?
I think she wanted us to email them to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, moving on to matters from the commission. Might there be any?
I'm doing a project called the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy for Mendocino and Sonoma County. And as part of that, I'm charged with identifying infrastructure projects in Mendocino County that could benefit from federal funding. So I'd like to encourage all of the commissioners, if you know of needed infrastructure projects in your own communities, to just email me about them, and then I can incorporate them. This project is not, it's a strategy, so it doesn't get you the funding, but you have to be in the strategy in order to apply for the federal funding. So right now I have 37 pages of different projects all along the county, but I think that as commissioners with your hands in the pies of the local areas, you may know about things that I don't know about. And so, it could be emergency fire egress, it could be water storage, it could be some kind of economic development effort that needs to happen in your local community. It could be a needed community facility waste, such as a wastewater treatment plant or a waste transfer station or a community meeting place. So those kinds of things are the types of projects I'm looking to hear about. And if you could just give me a rough idea of what it is, and then I can follow up with you with any questions. And thanks for letting me do this short advertisement for our community.
Great. So you want us to email you, Marie?
Yeah, or you can call me, whichever you want, whatever's easy. My phone number is 357-0330. I'm sorry, 6480. 357-6480. Whatever's easier. Thanks.
That's a great invitation. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Really good.
Any other items from the commission? All right, well, seeing none, let's move on to the approval of meeting minutes from September 2nd, 2021. Did anybody see any changes that need to be made? No? Okay. We're looking for a motion to approve then.
So moved.
Seconded.
Commissioner Morris,
Aye, yes.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiedemann,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Chair Purnell.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
And our final item is adjournment. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. The meeting is adjourned at 10:43 a.m. Thank you, commissioners and staff, and also Linda Roofing.
Yes, thanks to all.
Thank you. See you all in a couple weeks.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Aye.
Sorry about Amy, it didn't go through.